Hey guys, Jessie here. Today we are talking about Asana and how Asana can work for your meetings. So obviously, Asana is a great tool for managing your projects and your tasks. And I think that many people know that a best practice is as you are having any kind of meeting, you should be logging that information in Asana so that you have one central place of holding all that information. But what is the best way of getting that information into Asana? Well, that comes down to how you run your meetings and how you integrate your meetings processes with your Asana setup. So I'm going to share a few different ways that you can kind of track that information as well as prepare for meetings within Asana. We're going to be talking about both those recurring meetings, such as maybe a daily stand-up or even a retrospective, as well as one-off meetings, so something specific that comes up for a project where you just need to meet with a couple people or a lot of people. We'll talk about a couple different ways to build that out in Asana, as well as some tips to make things run smoother across your organization. Now, real quick before we dive into all this, I do want to share one meeting structure tip that I think will help across the board, both in and outside of Asana in your meetings, and that is to assign meeting roles. There are two roles that I think every meeting should have. One will be the meeting lead, and the other is the meeting scribe. The meeting lead is going to be the person who is keeping the conversation on track. They're cutting people off if they're going too far. They're moving things down the agenda. They're making sure that everyone has a chance to speak who should. The second role is the scribe. This is the person who is taking notes throughout the meeting and making sure that action items are captured, all that good stuff. In general, I think it's very helpful to note these at the start of a meeting, both so that everyone knows who's doing what, but also so that you have visibility into who is doing this most often. I think especially the scribe role tends to be given or ends up on the plate of someone who is more junior, oftentimes someone who is a woman, and I think that that's just not fair. Everyone should get a chance to take meeting notes. One cool tip that I have heard is to have the last person who logs into a video meeting be the scribe. Really good incentive for getting everyone there on time. But those are two things to keep in mind, and you will see those roles in the setups that I have here. Okay, so let's get to our first setup. This one is for probably most often going to be used for recurring meetings. This is the basic and probably the go-to Asana setup for meetings, which is to have a designated project for your meetings and then have each individual meeting live as a task within that project. A good best practice here is to have the meeting date somewhere in the title, establish some kind of naming convention so that everyone is entering it in the same way. Of course, you'll use the due date for this as well, but having it here is just going to be really useful for making it more searchable, making this list more scannable. It's just going to make life a lot easier. So if we go in here, you can see, I think that in general, the assignee will be the meeting lead, due date will be the date of the thing, and then we have the agenda. Now this is going to be something that is very easy to templatize, create a task template for every new meeting that has these general items filled out. But right here, you can go ahead and add who the scribe is going to be at the top of the meeting, just so that it's formalized. Have new topics. If you have multiple people who need to add their own agenda items, they always know where to find this meeting task and find it and add their topics here. And then you can even have these within your task template of your team check-ins. If you have the same people that need to be checked in on every single of these recurring meetings, have them here. So this, I think, is going to be the go-to setup for most organizations, most teams. It makes sure that everything is kept together. Now, what about the times when you have a project meeting? So this, again, works best for recurring meetings. You could keep project meetings in here and just say anytime someone creates a new meeting, they're going to create a new task in here so that they can capture the notes from that meeting. That is definitely a possibility. You could add a field to categorize it. But some people do like to keep project details within a project. So let's say, I'm going to go to a content calendar here. Let's say you have a content team. This is their primary project that they're working in all day, where they're creating content, moving it down the Kanban. You can go ahead and create a separate section for meetings. This is a lot easier to see in the list view. And then you can do something very similar. Each meeting has a task. You keep all the notes in there. I will say the one disadvantage of keeping it in here, advantages and disadvantages. Advantage is it is within the project, it's very easy to reference. Disadvantage is that it may mess up your reporting. If you are using the dashboard to keep track of, say, complete versus incomplete tasks within this project. If you have a bunch of meetings, which you likely will keep as incomplete since you want them easily viewable, even with filtering where you're hiding completed tasks, that will throw off your reporting. So just something to keep aware of there, but it does make it a lot very easy to access without overloading the number of projects that you have. Another option here is what I'll call the always updated meeting. Now this one is interesting. So rather than working as a individual task as your meeting, we're saying this whole project is the meeting. And every single time, again, this is for a recurring meeting, every day you're going to have the same things. So right here we're using sections to define what needs to be talked about. At the beginning of the meeting, you can have the meeting lead and the scribe, and you can actually go ahead and assign the members who are going to be the meeting lead and the scribe so that you have that documented. Have your teammates or yourself add the agenda items as individual tasks. You can have these, recurring check-ins, just some ideas for additional sections. You might have action items / follow-ups, anything that comes out of the meeting that people need to do. You may also have a section for the future where you add talking points that you need to address in future meetings but don't have time for in this meeting or is not relevant yet. Now, the advantage of this is that it's very clear, it's easy to use. What's nice is that as you add a new task, you can instantly go ahead and assign that out to another project. So rather than having to have someone else creating the projects creating the tasks to be added to other projects that you're working on, you just create the task right in here. You still keep this view on the left when you add a new task, and you can assign that out to its appropriate project. The disadvantage is that you don't have any record of what happened here. So, if you have someone who missed the meeting and the meeting is not recorded, there's no way to really know what was talked about, because ideally at the end, you are clearing this all back out in preparation for the next meeting. So that data, this information that was shared between teammates is lost if it's not captured elsewhere. I did also want to make one little note that I forgot on the last one. So I said that one of the main advantages is that you can create things at the task level. You can also do that in here. So let's say, so this is back to our kind of basic recurring meetings. This is the general setup that I'm going to say will work for most teams. If you go in to a meeting, if you wanted to, you could use subtasks as your action items. So the workflow of this one would be like, you take notes in here in general, right? You add any information that you want to capture because this task will live on with those notes. You use comments for after the meeting is done. But then you could add subtasks as action items, so you need to, call so-and-so. Let me move this here. What is interesting about this is that even though it is a subtask in this task, this task belongs to the basic recurring meetings project. This subtask, if we go in there, it doesn't actually belong to any project yet. So we can multi-home this, which is to say that we can, I guess it wouldn't even technically be multi-homing because it doesn't have multiple homes. It only has one. We're going to add it to a project, and we could say, oh, this is a content calendar task. I don't know. Or maybe this is, blog post about something. We could go ahead and add this subtask to a different project. And I already have this content calendar set up. I'll add it to the to-do section. And within my content calendar, it now shows up here. And what's interesting is that it is still the subtask of the other task, even though it's showing up at the task level here. So if I open this up, I could create more subtasks from here. It operates just like a normal task, but it still has that link back to the original parent task, the original task within the meetings folder. Or the meetings project. So any information that was shared in here is going to then be accessible. Just one little note here. So that is probably one of the main reasons why people like this is the ability to add those tasks. But you can do that with the other setup as well. It's just going to be what works best with your brain, what works best with your workflows. Some people really like the idea of it's just one place and you don't have all of those meeting notes bogging you down. So those are probably the main two setups for meetings in Asana, but I did also want to share kind of one wildcard setup, and that is for the people who do like this setup of having everything laid out at the task level, especially if you do not like using subtasks. There are some teams that don't use subtasks at all because they feel like things can get lost, which is totally valid. But you still want to capture the historic view of those notes. This is a third setup you could do. It works both in the board and the list view. And you'll see it looks very similar, but rather than using sections as those headers, we are going to use tasks and just have them live here. So meeting lead, same kind of thing, you can assign it. Scribe, you can assign it to someone. And then agenda items, this is not a real task. This is just used as a header. So agenda items, any agenda things would be added as tasks below here. Team check-ins, you can have the same recurring team check-ins that just live here. Action items, these are tasks that you create during the meeting. You could also use, if you liked the idea of for the future, you could add another section here for the future and have items that you want to address in a future meeting. But at the end of this, the idea is that you would be able to take the agenda items that you covered during that time, and you would take it out of the today section and you would move it down to a new section designated for that meeting date. Now, when I saw this, it's interesting. I think that some people are going to really love this, but in general, I feel like the other ones are going to work better for most teams. The one thing with this is that the main benefit of using this task level view like this one is that as you create an action item, you can then just assign it out and not have it tied to any other meeting. It just kind of lives on its own. Right here, as you're going through the meeting, you can create tasks and to-dos and put those in the correct projects. With this, because you're trying to create a historic view, you may end up creating two of each, one so that you have a historic record and one that's the real one. That just it starts getting a little bit messy. So I wouldn't typically recommend this, but I have seen it used, and if this one makes your brain happy, then it might be something to consider. So now that we've covered kind of the three main meeting setups that I see within Asana, I want to share a couple tips to make your meetings run even better when you are using Asana. So first, if you have a recurring meeting that you want people to add agenda items, go ahead and set up some sort of recurring reminder. So let's say you use Slack. That's going to be a really easy one. Go and set up a Slack bot reminder to your team channel to say, hey, everybody, go add your agenda items to the meeting. If you have a project like this, the Basic Recurring Meetings project, where every meeting has its own task, you could even use something like Zapier to send out a reminder to everyone that also includes a link to this task and says, hey, go add your agenda here. And then you could send that out over email or Zapier. It could get a little bit complicated depending on your setup, but that is an option. This is something that actually some tools automate. There is a tool called Fellow app. It is a meetings AI tool, and we'll talk about AI in just a minute, but one thing that they do is they have an automation to ping everyone in a upcoming meeting to say, hey, go add your agenda items. Okay, another good practice in general for your Asana meetings is to assign tasks during the meeting and not after them. So as you're going through each of these, again, the big benefit here is that you're going ahead and creating the subtasks. But even if it's a thing like, hey, I know that this is going to be, someone needs to go in and add 10 more tasks or subtasks to some process, make sure you're recording that. Add a task, or within here, add a subtask and says create new, create those 10 tasks and assign that. That way everyone is clear about who is doing what, even if that what is creating more tasks. Just make sure that's recorded. If you are in a version that has a task level view, so I would say that this is another benefit to this setup. So whether it's the always updated meeting or the always updated with the historic view, if you're at the level of having your agenda items at the task level, one thing you could do is add a field that has estimated minutes. You would do that by adding a field. You would add a number, and you would just title this estimated minutes. And then when people add their agenda items, they can estimate, okay, this is going to be something that is just like, I need to talk about it for 5 minutes. Someone else can say, oh, this is going to take a while. Let's put in 25 minutes. There we go, it's updating. And this will give you a really quick visibility into how long this meeting might take and if you're in danger of running over and if something maybe deserves to be moved to a future meeting or be made into its own meeting rather than take place in this meeting. So that is one little way to estimate meeting time that could be very useful. The final tip is to fully explore the integrations available between Asana and your meetings platform. So if you use Zoom, if you use Microsoft Teams, those are probably the two most frequent ones that I see. But any platform that you're using, look for integrations or look for Zapier integrations that could then be connected to Asana, because there may be lots of opportunity for automatically sharing information back and forth or even just links back and forth to make your meeting process a little bit cleaner. I know with Zoom, the Zoom integration, they have the ability to create a Zoom meeting directly from an Asana task. So that would work really well with this basic setup here, where each task you could then have an attached Zoom meeting. In Microsoft Teams, I know that you can pull up an Asana task within the Teams view so that you can be taking notes directly in there. The other thing to look into, okay, so no, that wasn't my last tip. One last thing here is to look into AI tools that may augment your honestly, your whole meeting process. So there are so many options on the market now for AI and for meetings that may or may not integrate with Asana, but in general will definitely speed up your workflows. One of the big ones that comes to mind is Fathom. Fathom, I know it has a free version, integrates really well with Zapier and therefore with Asana. One of the cool things with that is, so all of these, they record your meeting, they transcribe your meeting, and then they create AI summaries of your meeting. I haven't used any of these personally. I was just doing some research into a bunch of different tools. Other ones, I'm just going to run through them. Tactic, that's Tactic. This is a Chrome extension, so it only works with browser calls, but that's okay. That does work with, like, Microsoft Teams has a browser version, Zoom has a browser version. And its big thing is privacy. So if AI freaks you out, privacy freaks you out, that's their big thing. If you use Microsoft Teams, one option is Microsoft Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI tool. What's cool about that is you have the option to get in-the-moment summaries of what's already been said in the meeting. So if you come in 10 minutes late, you can just press that little button and see what's already been discussed rather than everyone having to take time to catch you up. A bunch of other ones, there's Crisp.ai, that's with a K, Read.ai, Fireflies.ai, Fellow is another one. The other thing with AI, oh man, we're covering a lot in this video. We're almost done. The other thing with AI, just have to add this, if you are new to AI, and you're excited about it but don't really know much about it, do just know that because this is a new industry, there are concerns about privacy and how data is being used. Do research. Make sure that the tool that you're using is safe. I know that, what is the one that I came across? Otter is a popular one, but they do have a note on commonsense.org that there are some privacy concerns. So do your research, look into, do your little Google searches on whatever tool is looking good and make sure that it is not selling data, that it is not having privacy issues, especially if you are new to AI. So we covered a lot in this video. I hope it was useful. Now I want to know from you, will one of these setups work for your team? Or if you are already using Asana to manage your meetings, what setup have you been using? Have you been doing something different? Is there something I don't know about? Please share with me. I would love to hear it. And I hope this was valuable, and always let me know if you have any questions. That was way too many calls to action, but I think you can figure it out for yourself. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.